Patch 4.1 for Genshin Impact has only been out for a few days, but we already have the Phase 2 banners that have been officially revealed. Which means that we know now who is coming on the Wriothesely and Venti banners, and well, it's not looking very good. This information comes directly from Genshin Impact's official page on BiliBili, a Chinese social media platform. So no leaks here, this is as real as it gets. We can take a look at the site now, and if we scroll down, this page looks pretty much the same as the pages we have in English. I mean, I can't read any of this, but I can tell from context, it's about contests and giveaways, daily login events for free Primo Gems, and other things I've covered on the channel already. And then we get to this section. This is where things get spicy because they show the current characters on the banners, but they also show the characters that are coming in Phase 2, which means we get to know the 4 stars ahead of time from an official source way earlier than normal. And while I really appreciate knowing things ahead of time, I wish I had better news, because it looks like the 4 stars on the Venti and Wriothesely banners are going to be Thoma, Chongyun, and Dori. So if you want to pull for Venti or Wriothesely, their banners are now a lot less value, especially when you compare them to the current Roulette and Hu Tao banners being so good. And I'll quickly give you a breakdown of why these 4 stars are on the underwhelming side. It really just comes down to the fact that they have some niche uses and big hurdles that make them a lot less desirable options compared to other 4-star characters. First we have Thoma. Thoma is visually really amazing for his normal attacks and abilities, and they're definitely some of my favorite in the game, but unfortunately they are a lot weaker than they look. His skill is pretty lackluster, it's not really that great of a shield, and it has way too long of a cooldown and doesn't generate that much energy. His burst can produce a very strong shield, but you have to do a bunch of normal attacks to keep it up, and because Thoma has big energy problems, that gets a lot more complicated. It does get a little bit easier to keep his burst up at Constellation 4, where he regenerates 15 flat energy because of that constellation, but he does still end up having some anti-synergy with characters like Hu Tao, Yoimiya, or other Pyro DPS. That's because his shield sends out waves of pyro attacks that can eat the element you're trying to react with. For example, if you're using Thoma with Hu Tao, Thoma can actually be the one that ends up causing the vaporize reaction instead of Hu Tao. And that's really bad because Thoma's damage is not going to be very good, especially when he's built with a lot of HP and energy recharge so he can be a good shielder. He can be pretty fun as the trigger for Burgeon teams, and he can also deal a lot of damage in those specific team setups, but to do that he needs a lot of elemental mastery, which means that you're going to sacrifice his shield strength because you're not going to be building him with a lot of HP. Next, let's talk about Chongyun and this popsicle-y pure yang spirit boy that is not really great, but is a lot of fun. His skill can give himself and teammates cryo infusion, and that's what he's most known for. But this only works for sword, polearm, and claymore characters. I see a lot of people who still think Chongyun's cryo field will make bow or catalyst characters deal cryo damage, which is just not the case. This ability is pretty neat, but it doesn't really have that many practical applications, despite seeming like it would be pretty good. Most cryo damage dealers either have their own infusion like Ayaka, or don't need cryo infusion like Ganyu and Wriothesely. And then there's other characters that are not of the cryo element, so they don't really care or benefit if their normal attacks are cryo. The exceptions to this are Rosaria and Kaya, who do appreciate this infusion, but honestly it's just better to run Rosaria and Kaya together than it is to run either of them with Chongyun, since they will do more damage together than they will with him. But outside of his skill, his normal attacks are really bad, worse than Barbara's in terms of motion value, even though they look really cool. His burst is also pretty nice, and it can be a really nice big nuke in melt teams, and it only costs 40 energy. So Chongyun is pretty fun, and he's far from terrible, but he's also not really that useful. And then we have Dori. Oh, Dori. Dori has low damage and multipliers and is terrible for elemental reactions. Her burst hits 30 times, but she has a special internal cooldown that makes it so her burst can only cause 4 reactions in total, which is just absurdly bad. The damage on this ability is really low, and because of the special internal cooldown, it means it's really difficult to use her as an off-field reaction support. But when it comes to healing, her single target healing ability from her burst is very potent, even without using a full healer build. But even this healing is a little bit restrictive because you do have to be fairly close to the lamp she throws on the ground in order to receive the healing. It does give you some range and it tethers your character, but the range it has is about the size of Bennett's burst, so you can easily break outside the range if you're dodging attacks, and then no more healing for you until you go back in range. Another issue that some people point out is that she's a single target healer, but so are most 4-star healers, so I don't think we can really hold that against her. Another big issue with her is that she has very high energy requirements, and her kit revolves around her elemental burst, so you definitely want to be using it off cooldown. Unfortunately, she also needs about 250% energy recharge, especially if she's the only electro character in the team. This is pretty ironic considering she also has a passive that regenerates anywhere from 5 to 15 energy when she uses her skill, so you think her ER requirements wouldn't be so high. Luckily, this does make her a good candidate for the Sacrificial Greatsword if you don't have something like a Favonius Greatsword to give her. Outside of her burst, her skill is not very impressive. It has a fairly long cooldown, it doesn't generate that much energy, and it is a single target ability, so it's not something you can leave on the field for any other electro application or particle generation. So low damage, bad reaction support, but good healing and energy problems take Dori from a character with a lot of potential to just another disappointing 4-star. If you want a good 4-star healer, go for Yao Yao. She also heals a ton, but basically doesn't have any of the problems that Dori does. Now, I've already talked about the 5-stars, so I don't want to rehash that here, but if you are curious about who's the best value for you, Venti, Wriothesely, Neuvillitz, or Hu Tao, you can check that video out. I'll have it linked in the description. What I do want to talk about, however, is how these 4-stars may affect which banners you wish for. If you care more about the overall value of a banner and not a specific 5-star, then these banners for Venti and Wriothesely are not what you want to wish on. The current banners with Fischl, Xingqiu, and Diona and either Neuvillitz or Hu Tao are way better to wish on. That being said, I know a lot of people are very excited for either Venti or Wriothesely, and there's definitely nothing wrong with going for those characters if that's who you really want. I think about it like this though. If I was a newer player without many characters and I didn't know what to do, the best advice would be to use several wishes on the current banners for Neuvillitz or Hu Tao and try to get either Xingqiu or Fischl or both, as they are some of the best characters in the entire game. After about 20 or 30 wishes, I'd pause and think about which 5-star I really wanted the most. If I didn't care, I'd probably wish on the Neuvillitz banner as he is more my playstyle, and he's a very good free-to-play character and on-field damage dealer. But if I didn't want Neuvillitz or Hu Tao, I'd consider going for Venti because he is very useful, especially in the Abyss, and even though Wriothesely seems like he's going to be very cool and a really fun character, the 4-stars on the banner just make me not want to wish. However, before I made any decision about these second phase banners, I would wait until the 4.2 livestream and see if I wanted Venti or the Hydro Archon more. And I know there's info floating around about the Hydro Archon and what she can do, but all of that is subject to change and it often does change, so I would wait until things were officially revealed and then check her out and see if I want her more than Venti. The good news is that after the 4.2 livestream preview, there would still be plenty of time to wish for Venti or Wriothesely. And if I really wanted them after seeing what I saw in 4.2 with the Hydro Archon and the rerun 5-stars, then I would go for either Venti or Wriothesely, but if I wasn't very keen on them, then I would wait for patch 4.2 or maybe even patch 4.3 or beyond, where we would likely have a Raiden or Nahida rerun. And I hope that breaking down my thought process has helped a little bit. It really is unfortunate that the 4-stars on phase 2 of this banner are just so bad, especially compared to phase 1. Regardless though, I hope you have a wonderful day, remember to stay jawsome, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.